Saltwater crocodiles are one of the most treacherous animals on the planet. Yet this man just knowingly entered its territory. We've all heard of never smile at a crocodile. How about kissing them? When it comes to all creatures great and terrifying, it seems no one understands what lies in the heart of a killer like this man. This is Rob Breddle, and right here is where he comes face to face with the killer instinct.
Come on!
This is Rob Breddle, snake handler, croc wrangler, animal expert. Rob is best known for his crocodile shows, where he performs the unthinkable 8 times a day. His innate ability to sense how wild and dangerous animals will act keeps him one step ahead of tragedy. He claims to still having all 10 fingers and 10 toes, so he must know something we don't. Well, he does. Rob may look reckless, but daily he applies the intricate skills he learned in the University of the Great Outdoors. And so he can be forgiven for sometimes taking all the hype about saltwater crocodiles with a grain of salt.
Wow, isn't that exciting?
Seen here in 1960s film footage, Rob was raised in the Australian outback and developed a love of reptiles and many other animals through the guidance of his herpetologist father, Joe Breddle. That's Rob in the middle, with his brothers Joe Jr. and John. He gained this bush education by helping his father gather a collection of snakes and lizards that eventually formed the nucleus of Breddle's Wildlife Park in Renmark, South Australia. Later in life, they started Australia's first successful crocodile farm in the far north of Australia. Rob Breddle, crocodile wrangler, was born.
I will walk around him.
It's Rob's understanding of the saltwater crocodile that has brought him fame, an animal he believes is one of the most misunderstood on the planet.
One of the most important things I learnt about handling crocodiles was the splash. Barramundi fishermen always used to complain about the crocodiles taking fish from their nets, but I noticed it was always the fish on the surface that was splashing that were taken. So I experimented with splashing with a stick. If I splash over there, he'll go over to there. If I splash over here, he'll actually come over to here. Now, he was over there, he's coming now. They always go to the splash. Even though he can see me, he will still attack the end of the stick. You watch. Here, come on. Gotcha. No second chances. So I found that even though they could see me and get me, they always went for the splash. They were almost totally predictable. I found they were not cunning or conniving in any sense of the imagination. Come and I'll show you. Crocodiles do basically all of their hunting in the water. On the land here, I can come up to him, I can actually scratch him on the nose if I like, kick him in his butt, wander out his territory, but never, never jump in his kitchen and splash. That's a no-no. Like this.
Imagine if Rob was a swimmer going for a quick dip. In the majority of croc attacks on humans, alcohol is involved. You can imagine a loud splash of drunk makes an easy meal for a saltwater croc.
He didn't like that. He wanted to eat me.
Rob's mission in life is to educate people about the many fascinating yet dangerous creatures that inhabit our planet.
Back it up. Comes again. So when he knows he can reach me quickly, have a look.
Watch again. Even with those jaws of death coming so close, Rob is in calm control. An expert animal tracker and handler, he can catch and play with the fiercest nature offers. at any size.
You are, aren't ya? Gotcha!
We're going to trace Rob Reddle's footsteps from outback boy to man of the land. Whether he's tackling massive animals that have already tackled others, or simply surviving alone in the bush by living fat on rat, Rob takes us face to face with a killer instinct.
After seeing me in action, many people think, is he mystical or is he mad? Now, I know I'm not mystical and I don't think I'm mad. Everything I do is basically under control. Now, what I did is just watched how the animal hunted and how he defended himself. And then I used those instincts against him, or as I call, to my advantage. I know exactly what they can do and can't do. So what I do is done in relative safety. Almost 100% predictable.
Coming next, some quick dentistry on a 100-kilo, 220-pound python. And later, the moment during the filming of this program that Rob Reddle received his 30th and potentially most fatal crocodile bite. Handling the world's deadliest animals requires more than instinct. It takes years of observation and practice. For Rob Reddle, these skills were developed from a very young age. It started in the outback town of Renmark, South Australia, where, after migrating from Europe, Rob's father Joe started his backyard reptile collection. Here the family pets were pythons, lizards and poisonous snakes. The years have worn on, but the house Rob grew up in still holds fond memories.
That there is the first snake house my dad built for the crocodile and all the tropical snakes that had to be heated. The second one's over there. Now, my brother and I were so glad when that got built because we actually got that one as our bedroom.
Their father's love of animals was passed on to their sons, whether they liked it or not, though they seemed to like it.
The very first crocodile my father got when I was 11 was on one of his trips, and he didn't think of where he'd put it when he got it home. So while he was building a cage for this thing, he had to put it right here in front of Mum's stove. Isn't that right, Mum? They got preference in this house, didn't they? Yeah. The animals always first.
They got first, yeah. We always come second.
Yeah.
Joe Brettle's collection grew until he opened a wildlife park, now managed by Rob's brother, Peter.
Having been brought up with snakes since we were little kids, we've got absolutely no fear of them. In fact, what we found out was that nearly everything we'd ever heard about them wasn't true. In fact, my father used to actually put snakes into the bed with us to keep them warm. Now, these are anacondas and boa constrictors that do have a bad reputation movie-wise. But very few of these animals actually do get big enough to be dangerous to humans.
They do, however, get big enough to attack small prey animals, and all use the same killing method, crushing constriction. All snakes have a breathing tube to allow them to continue breathing when swallowing such large prey. Even at a young age, Rob and his brothers were handling pythons. For the Brettles, these constrictors were treated like family pets.
Some people take their dogs for a walk. I take my snakes much more leisurely. What have you been feeding them tourists?
I reckon.
The prized python in the Brettle snake enclosure is also the world's most dangerous, the reticulated python. This potential man-eater can only be handled while firmly wrapped around a meal.
Look, she won't let go.
Okay, get your foot out.
Holy hell.
Well, we're moving, see, so she thinks we're alive. Chook's still alive. We'll have to help her out of the skin too, Peter.
Yeah.
Around 25 years ago, my father got a baby reticulated python about 2 feet long. This is the end result, 25 years down the track. I can hang on to this snake like this only because he's got a mouthful of feed. You can't do this when he's hungry. Because if he grabs you and wraps you up, that's it. He's over 100 kilos, he's heavier than I am. There's just no way you can handle this snake. Now they've not only got a tail, I'll show you a few other things about them.
Even this potential man-eater requires some tender loving care.
If I've got time, I always like to help a big python shed its skin. Now big pythons tend to shed their skin in bits and pieces, where the smaller pythons will do it in one whole piece. And the little bits hanging on seem to irritate them. They've got very, very sensitive skin, as you can see. Bites from smaller pythons, they're acceptable. One about this size, with 80 huge teeth. You're not going to let me see them. Look at down here. It's just still alive, it's a problem. Okay, it's coming up this way, it's probably this way now. 80 huge teeth. This one's coming out, look.
Grooming also needs to take place in the more hard-to-reach and sharper areas.
There's one tooth. They lose their teeth and regrow them. Imagine 80 of those going into your body somewhere with 100 kilos of snake on the other end of it.
For a man who never thinks twice about handling man-eating crocs and snakes, it's funny to watch Rob on the run from a cranky, fat old wombat.
We don't have to worry about crocodiles. Nearly got me, he did. I'll stick to the crocodiles.
After the break, Rob takes us outback animal tracking and later dining out Brattle style. The Australian bush is an inhospitable place. Scorching temperatures during the day are matched by near freezing drops at night. For the Brattles, this was paradise. Renmark is Aboriginal for red mud, and it was in the red soils that surround Rob's hometown of Renmark, South Australia, that he learned his remarkable animal tracking skills.
Just what do we mean by killer instinct? To me, it's the way an animal locates and catches its food or prey. When I'm in the bush, I use those same rules. I look for signs, and they're everywhere. When I went hunting with my brother and my father for lizards, we used to have a competition to see who could find the most lizards. And I learnt very quickly that you had to dig up the right hole, and that's the one that had the fresh tracks on it.
Rob uses an old bush tool, a stick, to sense how deep the lizard is.
It also shows me which direction the hole's going around that way.
The red sandy soil makes for easy digging. Rob carefully feels in the sand, as one wrong swipe of the shovel could end a little reptile's life.
He's home. Here he is. It's a painted dragon, just what I thought it would have been. Now this little dragon lizard is probably the most common little dragon in Australia. And he's food for just about anything out there that eats lizards. But then he also eats other little things that are smaller than him. I'm bigger, I'm bigger. Hey, I'm bigger. Remember this, I'm bigger. In defence, he'll even bite me. That made my eyes water, I can tell you. Ooh, even drew blood.
It was the search for the mighty king brown snake that drew Rob and his father into the bush, like prospectors looking for a hidden treasure.
I've just found a king brown snake over here. Now when we were kids, we used to come out here with my father into this desert region and spent countless weekends just searching for the king brown snake.
The king brown is one of the 10 most dangerous snakes in the world because of the high amount of venom it injects in a single bite.
To my father, this snake in this area was the diamond of snakes. And there were always stories of that 8-footer as fat as a beer bottle, the 12-carat one. But unfortunately, he never got one. They're always around about this size or a little bit bigger. I just pop him in the bag. Get off of there.
There are more than 80 species of poisonous snakes in Australia, at least 5 on a list of the world's 10 most dangerous. The most prevalent species near the Bredell property is the common tiger snake, the 4th most deadly snake in the world.
The very first poisonous snake I ever caught was a tiger snake when I was 11 on my way to school. Now I spent many a year through these areas looking for tiger snakes. They were the most common snake here. And in one day, my father and my brother caught 64 on one island in 4 hours. Now the reason we caught so many tiger snakes back then was they were actually needing them for venom research and anti-venom. On one of these trips, my father grabbed this big tiger snake by the tail and said, "Look at this beauty." And I won't say what he said because it was hanging off his hand. He had to grab it by the head and pull it off. And that tiger snake nearly killed him. So I don't tail handle snakes. I catch them with the jigger, behind the head, safe way.
And it isn't only the snakes that are poisonous in the outback.
This is a scorpion hole. A crescent-shaped hole is always a scorpion hole.
These nocturnal creatures are fantastic diggers, creating a deep hole far away from the sun-baked surface. Rob will now carefully slide his hand under the scorpion. Even if he was to be stung, this sand scorpion is relatively harmless to humans, but can deliver the equivalent of a bad wasp sting.
He's a little bit angry, he's in the strike pose. But the hand under him just feels like earth to him. He's not too worried. If you have to handle a scorpion, I find this the best way. Just let him sit on your hand. But put the other hand over him, very gently, he'll quieten down.
Next, we discover the environment Rob now calls home and how to make the catch of the day. Following an army posting to northern Queensland and a tour of duty in Vietnam, Rob decided to leave the desert area of Renmark for the paradise he still calls home, where the rainforest meets the Great Barrier Reef. Saltwater crocodiles control these estuaries, while freshwater crocs patrol the inland waterways.
I fell in love with the rainforests of North Queensland when I came up here with my father on my first collecting trip when I was 11. In that 1 month we caught more reptiles than he had in his entire zoo. And I loved Tarzan movies like any young kid would have. And if I was to actually be Tarzan and wrestle big crocodiles and catch giant pythons, it was going to have to be here in the jungles of North Queensland.
Rob's now in search of one of those pythons, the carpet snake. They shelter in crevices or hollows provided by rocks and trees. They hunt medium-sized animals like rats and possums, as well as sleeping birds.
Wow, we've got one. Come on, lady, let's go. I caught my first carpet snake near here on that first trip with my father. Now in southern Australia, in the dry country where I lived, if you wanted to catch a carpet snake, you'd have to go for months every weekend and still not be guaranteed of catching one. But here in the rainforest, you will find a carpet snake in a day. But on the way there, you'll also find a green tree snake, a brown tree snake, maybe a black snake, blue tongue lizard, a water dragon, and if you're near a creek, you might even see a crocodile. Life in the rainforest is just so visible when you compare it to the desert. Having spent much of my time in the bush, it was inevitable that I was going to get stranded by a broken down motor or the weather. Now I looked forward to it, because I always wondered how I would survive on that bush tucker. Now, I always went prepared. I always had a knife, a fishing line, or a gun. I spent 2 years with an Aboriginal 65 years of age, and he never took food with him. He always lived off the bush, so I watched him, and I gained a lot of experience of how to find this stuff. If you happen to get lost in the Australian bush today, it's easier to get a feed than ever before, because now we've got pigs, goats, rabbits, and rats. Yes, rats, and that's what I'm looking for. When you're out in the bush getting bush tucker, you've got to be a bit careful when you catch animals so you don't get injured. Now this thing could bite me fingers, and it's no good having an infected finger out here. So I've got to be very, very quick. Gotcha! That's him. Short and sweet.
With one part of the meal in the shopping bag, Rob now looks for tasty mangrove snails. And for main course, he's going to choose the very nippy mud crab. It's self-service in the bush, and if you've got this shopper's keen eye, you can spot the signs for the best tucker.
The mud crab also lives down holes, and if they're down in the hole, it'll be dirty. It's clearer over there. I can see some tracks here as well, and there's movement. Look at that. Just had his swimmer up. He's actually digging the hole. Now, to catch them like this, you've got to be very careful. You can put your hand into the water and go down the hole, but you've got to do it very, very, very carefully, gently. You can feel his big claw there, and his back. He's burying himself really good down into there. I've got to get around him as best I can. Okay. Lucky the mud's a bit soft, and I can actually. Just about got him. Gotcha! Come on! Gotcha! Come on! God, he's a big fella too. There he is. Now what actually did, he was sitting down with his claws basically against his body, trapped in his hole. I just stuck my hand down over his back, felt very gently, come down further, then slipped it over here, grabbed him on his claws like that, and once you're like that, he can't hurt you. I just pulled him very gently out of the hole like that. Dinner! Now there are many ways to light a fire in the bush. I've done it with a battery, an outboard motor, matches, but they get wet. I've seen it done with 2 sticks, but I prefer a cigarette lighter.
Here's a feast Rob caught earlier. Rob says it's more surf and turf than reef and beef. Waiting for the appliances to warm up, he contemplates the cooking order and method.
To prepare the rat, you've got to singe them first. You cook everything with its skin on out here. It holds the moisture in. Don't look too pretty. I'll take him out here again. Okay, now you can just rub all that hair off. You don't worry about taking the gut out, because it'll actually just curl up into a little ball. You can throw it away later. So the meat doesn't taste that much different to chicken. And they're supposed to be very, very high in vitamin C. Now I'll just cook him on the coals when it drops down a bit further. I'm going to prepare the fish for you now. Now I've got too much food to eat, so I don't need the whole fish. I'm going to do the specialty of fish sausage. You take the gut and the gills out. You gut the fish, throw the fish away, and you keep the gut. What you do is you poke this gut through its gills, basically turning it inside out, gets rid of whatever the fish had in his stomach, and puts the liver and any fat the fish had inside the sausage. There it is. You cook that. If it's a very fatty fish, all the fat goes inside, and in the wild that's pure energy. Crab's very simple, comes in his own pot. We just put him in and cook him gently on the coals. The shellfish, or natural, or cooked. I prefer mine cooked. And they come in their own little pots too. I just poke them in around the edge. Bit of the sand over them. That'll help cook them a bit quicker. I can hear that rat sizzling away. 15 minutes, 20 minutes, we've got to feed. Well, the fish sausage is cooked. Looks pretty gross. Tastes pretty gross too, but it's supposed to be very nutritious. Now, some of the foods the Aboriginals ate, I just couldn't eat. But out there, you can't be too fussy. But I can. I've got crab. As well as these little shells, they're ready also. A bit hot though. Just let them out here, cool off a bit. I'll spin the rat again. He won't be too long either, actually. Ooh, it's a little bit warm still. But they're cooked.
Entree, mangrove snail.
Not bad. Nice meaty piece in there, look at that, hey?
Main course, barbecued mud crab.
That is nice. Get him back a bit.
And for dessert, slow-cooked wild rat.
A little bit fiddly, but nice. Cooked to perfection. So much for the bush tucker. I'm off home to have a decent meal.
When Rob finally left the rainforest, he was met with the news that his father was starting Australia's first crocodile farm. By the early 70s, the Australian saltwater crocodile had been hunted to the brink of extinction. Its hide and teeth sought after fashion accessories. The Brettles believed the only way to save the species in the wild was to farm them like livestock. In 1972, Joe Brettle established Australia's first crocodile farm. His second son would manage it. It was the life challenge Rob had been waiting for.
When I first arrived in Edward River back in 1972, I believed everything that I'd heard about crocodiles was true. In fact, they were quite intelligent, calculating beasts, even able to run faster than a horse for up to 50 metres. Now, nothing was further from the truth. In fact,